Hey everyone, it's Anime Reaper coming at you with another What If Naruto Found Out About Uzumaki Clan at a Young Age, Part 14. This fanfiction was written by Genin. If you like this what if and want more like it, please like and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to check the description and leave a comment down below. Without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 29, Family. Naruto, after 1 week. He slept in his new house. After returning, his godmother returned to the Senju compound. Naruto had helped clean the house with his clones. Tsunade then invited Naruto to stay in her compound if he wished, since that's where she would live. Naruto had agreed, and after sealing all the important things, he went to the Senju compound. Shizune and Tsunade were the only ones with him, not that Naruto complained. After arriving, his godmother had told him that he could go everywhere around the house. Naruto had nodded his head and had explored the compound. It was extremely large, with enough place for 100 or more people to live. It had 5 different training yards. But what caught Naruto's attention was to check if Hashirama-sama had left any wood-style jutsu. She had told him to check the library. The seal used to protect the scrolls was a blood seal. And surprisingly, it worked when Naruto used his blood. He checked the scrolls about wood style. He finds different jutsus like wood style, deep forest emergency. The jutsu created a large forest, large enough to build a small village. The jutsu could be used in defense, offense, and control. The wood could absorb the chakra of the enemy and could be used to control by Jiryu. The jutsu was high S rank. Naruto also found the famous dragon wood jutsu of Hashirama-sama. Wood style, dragon forest. The jutsu was offensive, which could block someone's movement. Could absorb the chakra, and the dragon could cause damage to the enemy. S rank. Naruto had read many other wood jutsus, but only after getting permission from his godmother. She told him that he was the only wood user that could use them in any way possible. Naruto opened his eyes to see the light shining through the window, and he used his hand to block the light from coming to his eyes. Naruto looked around and didn't see anyone, not that he was expecting to see anyone. Slowly standing up, he stretched his legs and arms and wore his clothes. He tightened his katana on his hips and decided to train in kenjutsu. Naruto was training on his kenjutsu. He grew 10 trees and used his katana to slice them. Right now, he was trying to learn the Uzumaki style kenjutsu. It was a very advanced one. Togeji had even mentioned that it would be hard to learn how to do it without a sensei in kenjutsu. Sadly, Jiraiya didn't know kenjutsu, and neither did Tsunade. Kakashi's kenjutsu was very limited, and he wouldn't be able to teach him that much. Naruto wasn't bothered by it. He was determined to learn independently, no matter how hard it was. Uzumaki style kenjutsu was one of the best styles in the world. That style gave his mother the nickname, the Red Death of Konoha. He moved the katana around his hands before turning around and slicing 3 trees in front of him. The trees slowly fell to the ground. Naruto tried to catch his breath. He used his sleeve to wipe away the sweat on his forehead. Naruto looked at his sword, a smile on his face, and slowly returned to his scabbard. Despite being forged a long time ago, the blade was as sharp as the day made. Tsunade had mentioned that the sword was made by one of the best metals, could efficiently channel the chakra in the blade. Naruto slowly walked back inside the compound. Right now, he was alone since his godmother and Shizune had started working on the hospital of the Konoha. Naruto was happy about it. She was known as the best medic in the world for a reason, after all. Naruto looked around and couldn't help but notice the wood used for the compound. The wood had good light color, with beautiful carvings everywhere. The wood was soft to rest your head on it. The wood around the main room had the symbol of the Senju clan carved in the center of the room. The main room was large enough to have 30 people inside, and it had many tables and different decorations. Naruto rested on the couch of his room. He had a TV in it, but he never used it. The fridge was full of food and even sweets if he wanted. His godmother had used the money of the Senju clan account to buy important things for the house. Naruto kept his gaze at the ceiling. He thought about Fu-chan and Asha-chan. He hoped they were alright and hoped to meet them as soon as possible. He thought about the orange eyes of Fu, the long beautiful hair of Ishura. It seems someone has fallen in love, Kurama suddenly said, trying hard not to laugh. Naruto blushed from embarrassment. Is not like that, he screamed, completely forgetting that he didn't need to. Oh really, you might try to fool someone else, but I know your thoughts, and I wasn't the one thinking about Fu or Ishura. Kurama teased him with an evil smirk. Naruto opened his mouth to yell at his foolishness, but closed it, but then opened it again. And closed it again. "Shut up, stupid fox," he finally said, and decided to rest on the couch and possibly sleep. After some time, Naruto slept, and the seal on his stomach started glowing red, and the spiral in the center began slowly moving in center. The drawings around the spiral started growing and filling the empty space, and the seal now started growing red lines that slowly advanced to his forehead. The ring had grown that almost went completely black. Kurama could feel something was happening. The red lines reached his face, but the seal suddenly stopped, and the lines retreated to the seal. And the seal turned back to normal black before disappearing. Kurama narrowed his eyes to the strange thing that was happening. He didn't know what it meant and hoped that wasn't anything terrible. Tsunade. She was returning from her job in the hospital. It was almost sunset, and Shizun was beside her. Things have changed drastically for her and Shizun. From returning to the village and now raising Naruto. She knew he didn't need someone to take care of him since he had shown that he could take care of himself multiple times. From learning how to wash his clothes, preparing food, cleaning the house, and knowing how to fight. His talent as a shinobi was astonishing, but at the same time bothered her slightly, since Naruto had spent a long time of his childhood more like a shinobi rather than a kid that needed to spend his time playing and having friends around. She could tell that the village despised Naruto. Not only that, but Jiraiya had told her about the mobs and what happened before he took him to Mount Myaboku. Tsunade always knew the Jin hierarchy wasn't loved, but to beat a child was too much. Jiraiya told her that Naruto was the one who killed them with his wood style. According to him, no one else besides Sensei and them knew about the Mokuton ability of Naruto. Tsunade hoped Danzo didn't find out, but she still thought that the Rotten Hawk was the one to lie to her about Naruto so that he could have a chance to have his hands on him. Jiraiya had then explained his reasons to train Naruto. She didn't know the deal with the Akatsuki, but whatever it was, is not a good one. He had then told her about his wish to go back to Uzumaki and rebuild it. She couldn't help but remember that Kushina had wanted the same thing. The only things stopping her were her ties with Konoha, being a shinobi of the village, Minato, and being Jin hierarchy of the Kyuubi. She soon reached her compound. "Tsunade-san, do you think Naruto will want to train in medical?" Shizun suddenly asked beside her. Tsunade put the finger on her chin, thought about it, and didn't know the answer. She hadn't asked Naruto yet about it. The only thing she trained him so far was his super strength, but that was all she taught him. To say she had been surprised when Naruto told her that he used 350 pounds on his legs and 330 pounds on his arms would be an understatement. That was way too much training, according to Tsunade. She turned her head to Shizun and shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, Shizun, perhaps he might want, but he will need perfect chakra control to do that, and having the Kyuubi doesn't help him in that," she replied, walking inside her house. "Maybe, but I still think you should ask him," she suggested. Tsunade sighed. Naruto already had his hands full with training, fuinjutsu, ninjutsu, and kenjutsu. The only thing he didn't care much to train was genjutsu, and only because he had the Kyuubi. "I will ask him tomorrow morning," she replied and put the scrolls with things they bought in the market on the table in the main room. "I'm gonna check on him," she stated and left to see if he was in his room or the training yard. She reached his room and opened the door slowly to see him sleeping. She thought he looked peaceful like that. She sneaked in and kissed his forehead before quietly leaving the room. "Naruto." He opened his eyes and understood where he was. He yawned, and then remembered that it was apparently morning. "Kurama, how long was I asleep?" Naruto suddenly asked since it had been around 10 a.m. yesterday when he went to sleep. "Congratulations, Naruto, you have slept for almost a day," Kurama replied, smirking. Naruto groaned in annoyance but then wondered how could he have slept for such a long time. Sighing, he decided to see if Tsunade-san was around or if he needed to prepare his food. Just as he was about to go to the door opened to reveal Shizun. "Naruto, good morning, Tsunade-san has prepared your food, and she wants to talk with you," she said kindly and left the room after Naruto nodded his head. He dressed up and left the room. Soon reaching the main hall, he saw Tsunade-san drinking tea and reading something in a scroll. She turned when she heard footsteps. "Good morning, Naruto-kun," she greeted him smiling. "Good morning, Tsunade-san," Naruto greeted her back and sat at the table where they ate food. Soon Shizun came with the prepared food. It was miso soup, omureju, bread with honey, and sukiyaki. Naruto liked the smell and started with miso soup. Thank you for the food Shizun-chan, Naruto said, liking the taste. Shizun smiled kindly and started eating bread with honey and sukiyaki. Tsunade ate omureju. After eating, Naruto drank tea with his godmother, who looked deep in thoughts. There was silence among them, and Naruto noticed the glances Shizun was giving Tsunade-san. Finally breaking the silence, Tsunade put the cup of tea on the table and turned to look at Naruto. Naruto, I have been wondering if you would want to learn medic. She asked. Naruto raised his eyebrows since he didn't expect this question. He then thought about it, but he hadn't ever thought to learn it. To be a medical shinobi requires almost perfect chakra control. Naruto knew his chakra control wasn't bad, it was perfect, remembering that he had a giant furball on his tummy. Kurama growled loudly at the disrespectful name. Kids these days don't have respect for their elders, Kurama thought, and decided to try and sleep. Again. Well, I can try, but I don't think I can be that good, Naruto replied, since it was worth a shot. Tsunade smiled happily. Well then, tomorrow you will come with me to the hospital. First, you need to see and be prepared with what kind of injury you can see, and then we can start with your training, she said with a stern tone, and gone was the loving godmother tone. It could often happen that a shinobi couldn't handle the amount of injury, the things they see in combat, and therefore not be suitable for a medic shinobi. That's why Tsunade required Naruto first to see if he could handle it before actually training him in medic. Naruto finished his food and decided to go to the training yard. Before he felt a hand on his shoulder, he turned around to see Tsunade-san. She smiled before turning him to her. Where are you going, young man? She asked. Naruto looked confused. I wanted to go to the training yard and start training, he replied, keeping his hands behind his head. Tsunade thought that maybe he could do something else that doesn't revolve around training, but she knew Naruto wouldn't be comfortable with the stupid stares and the words thrown at him. She understood that Naruto didn't have that much else to do besides training and reading books. Very well, I want you to train with me today, she stated. Naruto looked even more confused but decided to see what he could do against the strongest kunoichi in the world if he could do anything to begin with. Challenge accepted, Naruto replied with a smile that Tsunade recognized very well. Naruto started walking towards the training, followed by Tsunade, who couldn't help but notice that Naruto reminded her of someone other than Minato and Kushi. The second day she arrived in Konoha, she had asked Naruto for a blood sample. The first reason was to see if he was healthy, and the second was to see if his DNA was similar to hers because of his wood style. Sadly, would take around 9 months for the tests to arrive, but it was worth it. They soon reached the training yard, and Naruto stretched his legs and arms. Tsunade just waited for him to be done while noticing the worried look of Shizun. Well, Naruto, before we start, don't hold back against me, and if you want, even use your Kyuubi chakra cloak, she stated thoughtfully and cracked her knuckles. Naruto wasn't afraid of what she was doing and decided to remove his weights immediately. He did a hand sign, and the weights were off. Tsunade noticed it and smirked. Naruto started channeling his chakra around his fists before putting his hands on the grass and launching at Tsunade like an arrow. Tsunade was surprised by his speed, and Naruto hit her in the shoulder but quickly got over the surprise and moved with medium cage speed, grabbed his hand, and threw him against the nearest wall, causing the wall to crumble. Naruto felt the pain in his back and clenched his teeth. Taking a deep breath, Naruto did a hand sign, and 3 clones appeared around him. Tsunade took a few steps before avoiding the first 3 punches and then quickly punching 2 clones. The third clone did a few hands sign. Multi-shuriken jutsu, he yelled, and a giant shuriken flew towards her, multiple in 9 shurikens. She quickly jumped up to a tree before noticing Naruto behind her throwing another shuriken. He did the same jutsu, and she dodged them in midair, but one of them transformed into a Naruto and was in front of her with a punch. Take this, he yelled before his fists made contact with her hands, and the ground around the split, creating a small crater. Naruto quickly jumped away, seeing his godmother that just shrugged his fist like it was nothing. Impressive, Naruto, but I know you're still holding back, she yelled before rushing at him. Naruto knew he couldn't handle her fists. He channels his chakra in his skin, puts his hands in front of her fist, and is thrown away by the strength. Naruto hit his back against a tree, and his stone-like skin turned to normal. Tsunade noticed his way of defense and had to be impressed. You channel your chakra in your skin to make it stronger and more durable, she stated. She knew he had earth affinity, but to be able to do that was impressive. Naruto stood on his legs before releasing his chakra storage seal. His whole body was engulfed in blue chakra. He channeled his extra chakra in his right hand. The chakra around his right fist slowly changed form and looked like a dragon. "Here I come," Naruto yelled before moving with medium Jonin speed. Tsunade smirked and stood her ground. Naruto's fist made contact with her right hand, and the ground exploded. The debris fell. Shizun rushed to see the smoke moving away, revealing Naruto, who had actually forced Tsunade to move away a bit from the strength of his fist. Tsunade felt her hand numb from his strength and was impressed, and she knew he still could use the one-tail cloak that probably made him much stronger. She then started clapping. Naruto raised his head smiling, his right hand hurting like hell. The sweat was coming from his face like a waterfall. "Well done, Naruto. Tomorrow we will start your training with your punches like never before," Tsunade stated before walking away. Naruto smiled, happy that he was able to impress her. Shizun walked to him and started healing his hands, but it didn't take long since Kurama did the same thing. Naruto soon started walking inside the compound and started thinking about the next time he met Fuinashira. "Kaa-chan, I will soon rebuild Uzushiagakur. Our clan will not be forgotten." Rashi. The sound of rain was everywhere around him. As he jumped from tree to tree, he was making his way to Han. He needed to let him know about his decision. His eyes glanced at the seal on his wrist, and it was a week ago when his Phoenix seal started reacting. He knew someone had made the first contact with the Phoenix contract, not entirely a member but still was something that meant there was someone out there, another Uzumaki out there. He wondered where they could be and how old was the person. Since it was the first step in Phoenix contract, it meant the person was young, most likely. The only Uzumaki he knew was Kushina Uzumaki, but she had died almost 9 years ago. It had hurt him when he heard the news. He had tried to have some kind of contact with her, but the Demonoki only let Han in the war against Konoha, and he was in constant watch every day. The seal on his wrist looked like a small red bird, spreading his wings with an empty dark circle in the center. He soon reached Han's home. He looked around but didn't see anyone. He landed on the ground and saw the door opening. Han walked outside almost like he was expecting him. He slightly scratched his hair. "Took you long enough, what's the occasion?" Han asked with his other hand in his pocket. Rashi said nothing but instead moved away from the sleeve of his right hand and showed the seal glowing red. Han looked surprised but then smiled at his friend. "I see, when will you leave?" he asked, slightly said that Rashi would leave. The old Uzumaki noticed but kept a neutral face. "Tomorrow, I have already sealed everything," he replied and wondered if Han would want to tag along, but he knew Han would never want to be a traitor to IWA. Despite never liking to be ordered around, he was always a loyal shinobi of IWA. Han nodded his head before turning his eyes to look at Rashi's purple eyes. "Good luck, and remember, if you ever need my help, I'm around here," he said and walked close to Rashi. He reached out his hand. Rashi smiled and shook his hand. To the end. To the end. The next chapter takes place on the Genin exams. 4 years later. 4 years later. The morning sun shined down on the world from a clear, nearly cloudless sky. It was another one of the beautiful days the land of fire was known for. The songs of birds and the cries of cicadas could be heard flowing along with the slight breeze that flowed through the area as the forest critters went about facing another day of life. As the sun rays bathed the land in its light and warmth and the sounds of nature echoed through the land. The Hidden Leaf village looked bright. People had woken up and started doing their jobs, opening the stores and the restaurants. The students of the academy were making their way towards the academy. Today was the Genin exams. Many were excited to start their journey as shinobi, dreaming of saving important people and defeating the bad guys. But one wasn't walking towards the academy. The said boy was in the training yard, his head leaning against a tree, his red hair reaching his shoulders with 2 fangs that reached his ears. Naruto had his eyes closed, and a leaf slowly started falling from the tree to his chest. Naruto now was 13 years old, and he was wearing a maroon jacket with the symbol of Uzumaki on the back, with a blue shirt underneath, his sword lying close to him. Naruto's face looked sharp, his blue eyes looked even bluer, his muscles could be seen, his six-packs and developed chest gave him a look of superiority. He had grown extremely handsome. Many girls in the academy looked at him with literal hearts in their eyes. He wore blue ninja sandals and white pants. His weights on his legs had gone from 350 pounds to 700 pounds on his legs and 650 pounds on his arms. The leaf on his chest slowly turned ablaze and burned. his eyes changed from blue to red. Despite using Kurama's chakra, his chakra wasn't leaking. No one could sense him unless an excellent sensor was around. The grass around him slowly burned to ash. After a few minutes, Naruto's eyes turned normal, and he opened his eyes to see the forest full of life. He stood up and tightened his sword on his hips, his hands behind his head, rubbing his hair. He looked up to see his sensei. "The academy has started," Kakashi-sensei said, looking down at him. His orange book in his hands and read it before glancing at Naruto again. The redhead didn't mind his sensei reading the book. He knew what it was about but never read it himself. To say Naruto was surprised when he understood what Jiraiya-sensei did when he said research would be an understatement. He didn't like his sensei peeping on bathhouses but still didn't try to tell him to stop or anything. He had his hobbies just like everyone else. Despite all that, Naruto liked to spend time with the older man. His job didn't let him spend that much time with Naruto, that's why the redhead enjoyed his moments with his godfather. "Don't worry, Kakashi-sensei, no matter how much I train with you, I will never be late," Naruto replied with a slight smirk and was ready to go to the academy. Kakashi laughed a little at his words and I smiled. "You never know, after all, you know what they say. You become just like the company you keep around," he replied and gave him a thumbs up before disappearing and leaving leaves behind. Naruto smiled and started walking towards the academy. After Tsunade had arrived back in the village, Jiraiya-sensei had stated that now he could spend more time on his spy network since Naruto had his godmother around. Togeji still visited but only once 7 to 10 months. Naruto had been said to hear that, but still, he understood the importance of his work. After Jiraiya had left, Kakashi had asked if he wanted to train. Naruto had accepted, smiling at his old man sensei. Of course, Naruto hadn't stopped calling Kakashi an old man despite his complaints and murmuring that the new generation had no respect whatsoever. Naruto just grinned at his complaints. Kakashi-sensei had taught Naruto a few fire jutsus and trained him in taijutsu. Kakashi always liked to train with Naruto. The Jonin knew Naruto was a prodigy like his father, and he knew Naruto was already strong enough to fight and give Kakashi a run for his money. But he didn't quite understand why Naruto was still in the academy. But the redhead had stated that he wanted to become a genin at the same time with his friends. Kakashi was happy to hear that Naruto values his friends that much. He accepted his answer and had just changed the subject. During the 4 years, Kakashi had talked with Naruto about his time training under Minato-sensei. Naruto was happy to hear all his stories. Kakashi had talked about his mother, too, saying that Kushina was like a mother to him. Her attitude, her smile, even Kakashi had stated that Naruto smiled just like Kushina. Despite trusting Kakashi-sensei, Naruto never showed his full strength against him. The only ones that knew his full strength were Tsunade-chan, Shizune-chan, Togeji, and Hokage-jiji. Naruto mostly kept his knowledge in Fuinjutsu a secret. In the last 4 years, Naruto had reached and fully learned level X of Fuinjutsu. The only problem was that there was no book whatsoever when it came to level 11 or higher. Jiraiya-sensei had stated that he could find more knowledge about Fuinjutsu only in Uzumaki. When it came to Fuinjutsu, Jiraiya had told him that the highest level in Fuinjutsu is level XX, but he stated that only one man could reach that level, and he reached it after a whole life of learning only Fuinjutsu. Naruto was impressed with that, but he knew he couldn't reach that level. Of course, Naruto hadn't been in Uzumaki yet to even start level 11, but he hoped to see his homeland soon. He had decided to use his Mokuton to rebuild Uzumaki. His strongest ninjutsu so far was Fire Raise-non. Naruto was able to combine Raise-non with his fire affinity to create a stronger Raise-non. But he felt that Raise-non could be even stronger. The new Raise-non looked like a fire sphere with flames leaking around and burning the ground. Fire Raise-non, low S rank. Cost, high damage to the user's hand and, if used more than 2 times without resting, could cause permanent damage to the point of losing an arm. When it came to his Kenjutsu, Naruto had almost learned the Uzumaki style, but he still needed to understand it fully. He lacked using it against strong opponents. Despite all that, Kakashi-sensei told him that he was very good at Kenjutsu. The only part he seriously lacked was Genjutsu. Short, he sucked it. And couldn't do much. His Genjutsu level was next to 0. But Kurama had reassured him that he could break Genjutsu thrown at him if his enemy used Genjutsu. Naruto had also created a Genjutsu counter seal. The seal worked to immediately notice if the user was under a Genjutsu by feeling the user's chakra. The moment the seal detected a Genjutsu, the seal activated, causing his chakra system to break it and even causing pain in the body if the first way didn't work. The only problem was that the seal couldn't detect high-ranking genjutsu like Deathbed, Raining Scream, Mudblood, Sorrow, and Despair, Yum, and others. When it came to controlling Kurama's chakra, he could reach 3 tails without losing control. The 4 tails proved extremely hard to control, and the dark thoughts were almost 5 times stronger in 4 tails state. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya had been there when he had tried 4 tails, and it hadn't gone well. Naruto had tried to think of positive thoughts, but the visions didn't stop, and the voice in his head made matters worse. Thankfully the seal on his stomach had reacted and had stopped him before he could do any damage, but it had taken a full minute for the 4 tails state to go away. When his chakra cloak had disappeared, Naruto's skin had red lines all around his body, especially on his forehead. The lines formed what looked like a shining star. The lines then had slowly gone back to the seal. Jiraiya-sensei had said that he had no idea why his body looked like that and why the seal had done that. Naruto hadn't tried 4 tails ever since that, 7 months ago, and the visions he had seen made it hard to want to try again. Since he had been in Taki, Naruto hadn't seen either Fu or Ishura, and he hoped to see them soon. Naruto thought of how Fu and Ishura would look like now. He remembered them very well and hoped to see them soon. He had the highest points when it came to academy. Despite his teachers trying to sabotage him a few times, all their tries had gone down the drain. Right now, Iruka-sensei was the only teacher along with Mizuki, who was his assistant. Naruto knew Mizuki hated him, but he didn't let it bother him. The civil council had bitched and moaned many times, saying that the demon was gaining power, but all their complaints had been silenced the moment Tsunade had told them that Naruto was the reason she was back in the village. But despite all that, many people in the village still hated him with a burning hatred, glaring at him and throwing insults, hoping they would land and that he would lose control and do what they thought and hoped he would do. 9 months after Tsunade had returned, the DNA test had been completed showing that Naruto's DNA was very similar to Tsunade's Senju. Hokage had concluded that Minato must have been a Senju somehow, but that brought more questions than answers. He had suggested that Naruto should carry the Senju name, but the redhead had declined, saying that he wouldn't change his Uzumaki name. He appreciated it but didn't want it changed. He was an Uzumaki through and through, and he didn't want to be anything else. Still, Hokage had insisted for him to carry both Senju and Uzumaki's name. Naruto had the name Senju and Uzumaki on his letters, and Tsunade Baa-chan had been happy to hear that she had a family. Naruto was slowly making his way to the academy, and he wasn't in any hurry to reach it in time. But his thoughts went to his friends. The last 4 years, he had become good friends with Shikamaru, Koji, Shino, and Ino. Sasuke keeps avoiding him at all times and always only cares about himself. He kept his emotionless face and just answered with HNN. Naruto had not tried again to be friends with him, and if he didn't want to be friends, then he wouldn't beg to be his friends. Sakura kept her fangirl attitude that Naruto disliked. Every time she entered the class, she would start with her screech Sasuke-kun. Naruto found her completely worthless. She still could become better and become a true kunoichi, but she better start doing that sooner rather than later. Ino, on the other hand, was still a fangirl, but she still trained slightly, at least. And she had stopped running after Sasuke but instead kept her gaze at Naruto and would usually try to start a conversation with him. The redhead liked that she wasn't like Sakura and some other girls. Of course, she was still a fangirl but at least took her kunoichi job more seriously. Shino didn't talk much, but that's how he was, but every time he spoke sense and did not say nonsense things. He was thoughtful, and that's what was necessary. Kiba had avoided Naruto mostly. Since his humiliation, he kept a distance from the Uzumaki. They had talked a few times, but he still kept his distance. Akamaru, on the other hand, liked Naruto, and sometimes would lick Naruto. Hinata, well, she would blush every time Naruto was around. Of course, Naruto understood the Hyuga girl apparently liked him. Hell, she had even stalked him a few times. Naruto had been slightly annoyed by it. Instead of chasing him, she should find the courage to talk to him. Naruto had tried to talk and even invited her to come with him and his friends to a restaurant to eat, hoping that would help with her shyness and find courage, but instead of accepting, she had fainted. Naruto soon reached the academy, and a few students and teachers were looking at him, surprised to see him with a sword tightened to his hips. Since he had joined, Naruto had only mentioned to friends that he used a katana but never took it in the academy. He soon reached the class and opened the door, and his friends were sitting together in one empty seat for him. Ino sat close to their desk with Hinata. "Good morning, guys," Naruto greeted them, and they welcomed him back. Naruto slowly reached his seat and turned to look at Shikamaru, who had fallen asleep after greeting him. Naruto's sweat dropped behind his head. He still couldn't understand how he could sleep so fast, just like with Iruka's secret big head jutsu. He never revealed how he could do that and perhaps would stay a mystery. "Naruto, is good to see you. I see you have brought your katana," Koji said, eating chips and offering him some. Naruto took a few and nodded his head. "Yes, it is the Genin exam, and I wanted to show everything for the last day," he replied smiling. Shikamaru grunted and slowly raised his head. "Troublesome, I hope that's not the case, Naruto. I don't think Konoha can afford to build a new academy," he stated, half asleep. Naruto rubbed his hair while the others looked confused, why they would need a new academy. "Don't worry, Shika, nothing will happen to the academy," he replied. "I take you will earn the Rookie of the Year." "Why is that?" "Because you're the best shinobi of the academy," Shino suddenly said with his quiet voice. Naruto turned his head to him. He shrugged his shoulders and was about to reply when, "You're blind, Shino. Sasuke-kun will be the Rookie of the Year. He's a prodigy, my mother confirmed it, and she's in the council," Sakura shouted, and the whole class needed to cover their ears from the screech. Naruto turned his head to her, already bored of her attitude. "Sakura, no offense but Sasuke is everything but a prodigy," he stated, annoyed. Sakura pointed the finger at him. "Ha, you are just jealousy," she replied, screeching. Naruto just raised his eyebrows. "Why would I be jealousy? And a prodigy are the likes of Kakashi Hatake, who became a Genin 5 years old, Chunin 6 years old and a Jonin 12 years old, he stated, and that grabbed the attention of everyone in the class. Even Sasuke looked interested in what Naruto was saying. A prodigy are the likes of Minato Namikaze. He became Jonin when he was only 14 years old, and a Hokage shortly after and was known as the fastest person in the world. A prodigy are the likes of Hashirama Senju of the Mokuton and the strongest shinobi who could be rivaled only by Madara Uchiha, the strongest Uchiha ever to exist so far, he stated, and everyone looked surprised at what Naruto had said. Sasuke looked surprised and slightly angry with what Naruto had said. If that was true, then he was nothing special, the best he was above average. Naruto, of course, wanted to mention Itachi Uchiha since he was the youngest Umbu. Still, he knew that would make Sasuke angry, and mentioning a traitor who slaughtered his clan wouldn't look well, despite Naruto finding the whole thing suspicious. He remembered Itachi when he came with his mother to the orphanage. He had guarded Naruto for some time, and not once had Naruto felt any negative emotions coming from the Uchiha prodigy. The class kept quiet after what Naruto said, and they just had a small talk with each other. Naruto talked with Shikamaru and Koji about who would be in which team. Soon Iruka-sensei walked inside the room, followed by Mizuki. He looked around the class and was relieved not to hear shouts, and mostly the class was quiet. "Well, today will be the Genin exams. The first part is the throwing exam. Everyone follows me," he stated with a stern tone, and everyone followed behind. Naruto kept his hands behind his head and followed, being quiet but inside, thinking of Mizuki's extra amount of hostility. Soon they reached the small training yard of the academy. Naruto saw 3 dummies and 5 targets in a nearby tree. The targets were in the branches, and one of them was at the top of the tree. Iruka cleared his throat and turned to look at his class. They had grown quite a bit since he first saw them. He looked at Naruto and couldn't help but be impressed. At first, he thought Naruto would be trouble, but instead, he was the Rookie of the Year. "Very well, one by one, you will throw your kunai or shurikens in the dummies. After that, you move to the targets in the tree. You pass if you can hit 3 out of 20 targets. If you hit the one at the top of the tree, you earn extra points," he stated with a stern voice. The whole class nodded their heads and, one by one, took turns. Shino hit 16 targets out of 20 targets. 4 in each of the dummies. And 4 hits in the targets in the tree. Shikamaru hit 11 out of 20 targets. He only hit one of them in the tree since he found it troublesome to jump in the air to hit some of them. Kiba hit 12 out of 20 targets. In the tree, he got 2 hits. Ino hit 9 out of 20 targets, hitting 1 in the tree, and smiling when she saw her result. She gave Sakura a smirk and told her to try and do better. Sakura had a determined look and looked over her shoulder at Sasuke before going there and showing her skill. Sasuke is looking at me. I will show him and impress him, she whispered before taking her stance and throwing her shurikens. She got 3 out of 20 targets, the minimum needed to pass, a second after she threw them and saw the result. Ino started laughing out loud and lying on the ground, and holding her stomach. Irika looked disappointed but decided to just go on with it. Koji got 7 out of 20, earning a smile from Shika and Naruto. Sasuke started walking towards them, some of the girls started screaming about how cool he looked when he walked. He took his shurikens and hit all the targets in the dummies, and turned at the tree. For the tree, he took 4 shurikens and 2 kunaus, earning a confused look from Irika. He took a deep breath before jumping high in the air and first throwing 4 of his shurikens in the targets, before quickly grabbing his kunaus and throwing one at the target in the top and throwing the second kunau to make sure that it hit the final target. When he landed back, he looked up to see his final target wasn't bullseye but close. He clenched his fists but decided to calm and turned at the class, ignoring the shouts of the girls. He only focused on Naruto, who smiled at him. Finally, it was Naruto's turn. When he went to grab the shurikens that Mizuki brought, he could just by looking at them understand that they weren't real blades but made by soft material. A material like this one would most likely never stick at the target, let alone penetrate. Naruto then smirked and took his shurikens. He added wind chakra before throwing at full strength. The shurikens cut through and hit the wall and stuck in the wall. Everyone looked surprised except Shikamaru and Shino, who knew Naruto kept his true strength a secret. Naruto then turned to the tree and jumped twice as high and threw his kunaus. They penetrated the tree like nothing and hit the ground with enough strength to cause it to split. Irika kept his mouth wide open, and his jaw hit the ground, and not believing his eyes. Mizuki clenched his fist and teeth almost to the point of breaking his teeth. Naruto turned and walked back to the class as nothing had ever happened. The course soon got over their shock, and the girls started screaming for Naruto and calling him handsome and strong. The redhead high-fived with Shikamaru, Koji, and Shino. Irika got over his surprise and then informed how many points each one had. Soon after the throwing exam was done, the Taijutsu exam was next. Naruto found this part mostly dull until it was the turn of his friends. Shikamaru won against his opponent despite saying that it would have been better just to lose since it was troublesome. The others also won, except Sakura, who lost against Hinata and Naruto against Sasuke. When Irika announced that, every girl in the class started shouting for their favorite boy to win, except Hinata, who just kept staring at Naruto. Sasuke smirked when he heard who he would fight against. "Let's see how strong you indeed are," Sasuke thought, and walked to the center of the arena. Naruto walked into the arena and kept his focus on the match. Irika looked at both of them before yelling Hajime. Sasuke made the first move and rushed at him with high Genin speed. Naruto kept his focus on him and just avoided his swings. Sasuke kept rushing, but Naruto could see he was using Uchiha Taijutsu style, but he kept dodging his fists. Sasuke felt his blood boiling, so Naruto wasn't taking him seriously and just avoiding his punches as if facing a child. They kept going like that for 4 more minutes. He rushed again with all his strength, his fist directed at his face, but Naruto just moved to his left, making Sasuke turn fast to his right to try again when he felt a pain in his right leg, almost like his bone was broken. He fell on his knees but didn't yell in pain, but just clenched his teeth tightly. Irika and everyone except Naruto looked confused about what had just happened. The redhead stared down at Sasuke. "Listen, Sasuke, you will never get good if you let your anger consume you. If you keep going like this, you will have another incident like this, but next time will be against an enemy who won't have mercy," Naruto stated with a cold tone that sends shivers in everyone's body. Naruto then put his hands close to his right leg and started healing it. Sasuke kept quiet but listened to his advice. Irika now looked even more confused. How can Naruto know how to heal? He asked himself. After a few seconds, Naruto stood up, and so did Sasuke, who didn't feel pain anymore. "Winner is Naruto," Irika announced, earning shouts from the class. Naruto started walking away. "Thanks for the advice, Naruto," Sasuke suddenly said, looking down. He then looked up at the redhead. "But we are still rivals, and I will soon be better than you," he started smiling. Naruto smiled back. "I look forward to that day," he replied and walked back to the class, followed by the Uchiha. Soon it was the final exam where they needed to answer questions. Naruto looked bored, especially in this one. Mizuki started spreading the tests. He smirked in a stupid smile when he handed his test to Naruto, who seemed half asleep. Naruto felt the chakra all over the letter and just disabled the stupid genjutsu and started answering the questions. After that, they were tested in clone jutsu, transformation jutsu, and substitution jutsu. He did shadow clone jutsu, much to the surprise of Iruka-sensei. Mizuki on the other hand. But we said clone jutsu, he said, hoping there was still a way to ruin the demon's chances. Iruka shook his head in denial. No, is not stated that it should be an academy clone jutsu, that one is the easiest, that's why everyone uses it. He stated happily that Naruto passed the exam despite having no doubts that he would. Mizuki looked ready to burst into flames. No, no, no. I should either try myself or tell someone to try and grab the scroll for me, he thought. Naruto walked close to look at the ninja emblems. He chose the black one and walked away. Congratulations, Naruto, Iruka said smiling. Thank you, Iruka-sensei, Naruto replied and left the class. I'm a Genin now, Kaa-chan and Tou-chan, wish me luck. That all for What If Naruto Found Out About Uzumaki Clan at an Early Age, Part 14. If you like this story, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to my channel, and also show your support to the author by hitting the link down in the description. Thanks for listening, and until next time.